I'm going to do a little chatter so that I have a chance to check on the destinations that we're landing.
Sure,
Those of
cool.
us those of you who are joining us for the first time, give me 1 minute, give my bearings. But ultimately, yeah, we are live here with Restream. And these two gentlemen who are joining us here, well, Bob is joining us here on the Modern Job Search Checklist. Want to welcome each of you. I just realized that I spelled checklist wrong, so excuse the spelling of that. We're streaming on
Hey,
LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook for the second time, and we're doing well. In the
yeah,
meantime, on the top right is Damian Burkle, my co-host. He is on jobsearching.org. He's also the founder of Professionals in Transition, which is an organization that's helped more than 10,000 folks find positions.
nice.
And right below is my good friend, Bob McIntosh. He's a career coach. He works with the Mass Lowell Career Center. Did I
Yep.
get that right, Bob?
Mass Higher
Yeah.
Lowell Career Center.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
And Bob's been doing it a long time. He too writes as much as I do. Probably these days writes a little bit more. I've been distracted by the live stream thing lately.
Yeah.
But all of this to say, I got all the goodies. If you're on LinkedIn, you could definitely follow his profile. And that's probably the main place you can follow him. He's also LinkedIn top voice for 2019. I believe that's correct. Did
Yeah.
I get the
Yeah.
year right?
Yep.
And he doesn't care anything about the accolades, but
No,
that is a
no,
big
no.
deal.
It's all about the moment, man. It's all about the moment.
That's the
You know?
truth, right?
Yeah.
It's all about following him. You would definitely get a lot of value going to his blog as well. His blog
Appreciate that.
is thingscareerrelated.com. I want to be sure to get all that out of the way.
Yeah. Right down
Now,
at the
Bob, I
bottom.
want to have you right, and Bob, I definitely want to have on the show because he's written a ton of articles on interviewing. If I'm not mistaken, you've written nearly 100. Have you hit the 100 mark yet?
It must have. It must. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
on LinkedIn specifically, yeah, 112, but a lot on interviewing. Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
lots on interviewing. So we definitely want to have him on because he's written about it more than I have. I can't. Uh, I don't know if I have 50 on interviewing at this time. I probably do, but nevertheless,
quality is the most important thing, not quantity.
ain't that the truth?
Right, Damien?
Otherwise, I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Right.
If it wasn't
Absolutely.
quality, I wouldn't have you here. And if you know, Damien is also an author book of the Job Search Checklist, circa 2013. So if
Nice.
you want to try to go to Amazon, hit that up. That'd be great. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the show, with the content. Here we go. If you have questions,
Excellent.
feel free to put it in the chat. If you have comments, feel free to put it in the chat. If you are at any of the destinations, feel free to chime in, say hi, talk with each other. Feel free to interact with us. We'll be sure to answer live questions if you have them. We'll do that and prioritize that
Hmm.
mostly before we do anything else. So here we go. One of the big things we're talking about these days is about how the pandemic has affected interviewing and the way that
Yeah.
we should think about it. Uh, for you guys, and Bob, I'll start with you. How's the pandemic fared for older workers as far as you've seen with the clientele that you've had? And, statistics have were showing early on that it was not looking good for the older workers,
No.
according to Next Avenue and some of the other publications that feature older workers. What's
Right.
your view of that these days?
Well, I'm not going to pull any punches here. It has been pretty abysmal.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's bad for everyone, regardless of age.
Mhm.
But the older workers, they seem to be hit by it pretty strong. And I have a job club I run at Mass Higher Lowell Career Center. And prior to the pandemic, I mean, people were coming and then leaving the job club. But so far, they're leaving slower. In other words, they're not getting jobs as quickly as they were. So
Mhm.
my age group, my clientele is 55, average of 55 years old, and
Mhm.
so I go by that. I just go by firsthand experience and seeing how they're doing during this pandemic, and it's tough. It's very tough.
Hmm.
What more can I say? I say that if you really want to succeed in this tough time, then you just have to be really persistent. And I think attitude plays a big part in that as well. If you're a mature worker, you're looking for work, you just got to go in there and you got to prove to them that you add value. And regardless of who you're against, you're going to add value because you're bringing with you a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge, dependability, all the great stuff that mature workers offer employers. So.
Hmm. Hmm. Damien, in meeting with people in the professional transition group, are you finding that maybe some of the older workers are lacking some confidence and some apprehension as they're going about wanting to still work and be active in this job market?
Absolutely. And the length of time that it is taking for them to find work has increased.
Mm,
Part of that is because the pandemic kind of scattered people here and there, and
Hmm.
companies are having a harder time with the process, and it's taking longer. But older potential employees uh, have been affected dramatically. And much like the job club, they are staying longer at professionals in transition. And much like you said, it really comes down to attitude and being the answer to the employer's needs. Plus, what you were talking about in terms of really hyping all of the good things that an older worker brings into the environment. And also, if you have the chance, dispelling some of the myths that older workers get sick more and take more time off,
Hmm.
et cetera, so that you can bring up their confidence in their ability to hire you. But I am not in any way saying that ageism does not exist, because it does.
yep,
And my takeaway when folks talk about that is I say, yes, age discrimination is a real phenomena. It does exist. And if they are going to be worried about your age and your performance on the front end, you'll experience age discrimination throughout your time with the company. And why would you do that? Why would you
right.
do that when you can go on and find other opportunities that are more receptive to your experience, your age, and your willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done?
Hmm. So, Bob, do you find that uh, one of the challenges in coaching older workers might be the mindset that they have, the way that they're looking at it, or could be their presentation when they're presenting themselves to employers or other people who may be influenced to get them to the right door?
Yeah, well, again, my clientele, they're very polished in terms of their presentation. The
Hmm.
majority
Yeah.
of them are mid-level to high executive level job seekers. So they're
Hmm.
pretty polished in terms of the presentation. I can't tell you how
Hmm.
many times though I've had to say, just keep your head up. Just, don't give up. Don't give up, because there is hope. So yeah, it is about attitude to a great extent. And it's frustrating. I'm thinking of three of my clients right now who I hope land very soon because I just
Hmm.
see a lot of disparity, and it's sad. But on the other hand, I've seen some of my long-term, and generally most of them are long-term job seekers. I've seen them land.
Hmm.
One woman in particular, get this, she had like 10 interviews at a pretty large, you know, I won't name the company, but
Hmm.
10 interviews before she was told that she, wasn't going to be accepted. And then she had
Lots
nine
of stories like
interviews at
that.
another company
Hmm.
right afterward who eventually hired her. So
Hmm.
that's part of it too. Employers are taking longer now to pull the trigger than they did pre-pandemic. So the average time of of filling a position is about 40 days. And that's yeah, and that's gone up from like 30 days from my last time I've seen any stats on that. So that's just way too long. From the time you submit a resume to the time that you're hired, 40 days for one company. That's just on average. And I mean, depending on the occupation and industry, it could be longer, it could be shorter, but it's not doing anyone any good. A lot of positions are going unfilled. Now, I do have to say that the unemployment benefit packages that are, they're receiving are pretty substantial. And so there may be this case where, what, if I'm going to work for less money, then I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to stay on unemployment and ride it out. But I got to tell you, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But I do think that there are instances where if people are not, again, you're on the high end. So of course, things like unemployment and stimulus are not particularly major factors in them deciding to choose between working and not. It's a no-brainer. But ultimately, I think that people are kind of in this position where maybe some of that, what we all teach as far as and how to change careers, and maybe even saying no to some opportunities to get the right job, might be sinking in. Damian, do you think any of that might be factoring in at all?
I think part of it, when Bob was talking about the 40 days, we recently had a PIT member. We abbreviate Professionals in Transition, and she was in pharmaceuticals and in human resources, and their time frame. And mind you, this was pre-pandemic. They had 90 days to fill a position.
Wow.
And that was their benchmark. And so, Bob, you're right. I mean, it varies from industry to industry, but yeah, there's been a huge slowdown. And, going to what you were just saying, are people staying home? Well, in North Carolina, it's a right to work state. It's 12 weeks and it's $350 a week base, state of North Carolina. And then, whatever.
Massachusetts is a lot higher than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So was Ohio. And kind of going to what Mark was saying, this media blitz, if you will, saying people are sitting at home because they're living off of their unemployment. Not from what I'm seeing. The people that I'm working with, and it sounds like your clientele and our members are about the same, 50 plus, college educated. They're working really hard at finding a job, regardless of how many weeks of unemployment. I mean, 12 weeks, that flies by. Anybody that is sitting at home waiting for their unemployment benefits to run out is doing a huge disservice to themselves because of the length of time it takes to ramp up and really build momentum in your job search.
Right.
And if I could, one other trend that I'm seeing is we've had folks who had been out of work for much longer than 3 months, and they've gone the temporary route, and some of them have gone temp, and then they've been hired by the company that they temped into. And if you're coming to the end of your unemployment benefits and you don't have anything, temp work may not necessarily be what you want to do.
I'm a big fan of temp to perm. Trust me. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So am I.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, I mean,
two
of my
please.
clients have exceeded what their temporary position, their tenure was supposed to be. But yeah, sorry for interrupting, but yeah.
No, that please speak up whenever.
Well, I mean, there's so many variables, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong necessarily. I mean, look at, they have to deal with childcare issues. If they go to work, they'll get, in some cases, if we're talking about the lower end job seekers, they'll make minimum wage, and you can't live on that. So I understand it. Would I do the same? I don't know. But getting back to the struggle of job seekers, regardless of age, it's tough. It's tough, and employers are saying, "Well, we don't have enough people. There's not enough supply." Yes, there is, but employers are paying less salary than they used to, and
And
I'd say the same to my clients. They're paying less. Not in all cases. I've had some clients who've made more than what they were making in the past, but I would say in general less.
definitely. I want to read Elaine Santiago. Thank you very much for your comment here. She says it's pretty tough. I've
Mm,
been working for 8 months, college degree, worked for a major corporation for 20 plus years. It is very difficult. Again, I hate making broad statements across industries because each industry is different. You guys know my co-host Jack Kelly
oh yeah,
who
oh yeah,
works in the
Zach.
compliance industry
Yeah.
and the investment industry, and totally. I mean, he has one picture, but he's very connected to the ground as far as the regular working person. It's been tough for many people, and yeah, we can say all these different variables, which could, sometimes it brings up hostility when you even mention them. But I think ultimately people are looking, companies kind of set the bars in different places. It's sort of like a sliding scale. If it's this, then we do this. And if they do that, I mean, just like the last recession where, when the jobs were scarce and they
Yeah.
were actually, and then they start to open up, you had all these jobs that people never heard of. And then you get the employers that said, hey, if there's a shortage of talent, it's not a shortage of talent. You just made up that job just a second ago because technology is moving at the speed of sound.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, it's hard for education and regular folk to keep up with that migration. So I think one of the things Elaine can probably think about, I don't know what her perspective has been about how she's been going to find it, but definitely in being solution oriented, definitely I think we're all on board, no doubt, no question, because I know both of you really well, that you have to be very targeted and very focused in your industry and target jobs that you want and target companies that you want.
Mhm.
And it does take a little bit more time at the beginning to strategize, but I think ultimately people end up getting at least the interviews. I don't know, Elaine, how are things been going with your interviews? You can put that in the chat somewhere, and we can kind of get to some of your concern and help coach you along in this particular session while we're talking, because we like to do that. There's I didn't get this person's name. It didn't show up in my feed. Maybe it might show up in yours, but it says, thanks for emphasizing that there are enough employees out there, but employers' wages are not keeping up with the reality of living today. Some states are still, I mean, the federal wages are still like at the $10-11 an hour per hour wage, which is ridiculous as far as
Mhm.
the average wage. And people, I get where people may say, hey, well, people should be able to do better and do all that. And really, I'm like, that seems to be a default mechanism for people who have who were able to land traction. And sometimes careers is a matter, I hate to say it, it's not a luck as far as you getting your credentials. Sometimes it's a luck as far as which industry you've landed at the right time in the right place. So I think that makes a really it makes a very interesting situation, the way we look at jobs, and plus the way that we may coach other job seekers. Damien, your thoughts?
What I was going to say, actually, I was going to go off in two directions, and I don't know if both of you are seeing that. And again, it could be, the Carolinas because it's right to work, but I'm seeing an increase in a take it or leave it position by employers. So confident, and it depends really again on the job, but so confident that when it comes to salary negotiation, they won't even give you room to negotiate. They'll say the wage is blank right off the bat, and usually it's below market, and literally, it's take it or leave it. And then coming back to what both of you were talking about, it is a long and lonely road to reemployment, and with the birth of applicant tracking systems, there are many people out there, I believe, that don't understand the dynamics and how you permeate through. And, there's a lot of trial and error out there. And again, until you get it, if you will, understanding the power of LinkedIn, the power of applicant tracking systems, and how to play the applicant tracking software against your cover letter or your resume, there are tons, I would guess, of well-qualified people that aren't making the cut because
Good
a
point.
human never sees it.
Yep.
So,
Great point.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Mark, you
Elaine
were.
says, I was going to
sorry.
say, Bob, I've just given an update on Elaine as
Yes,
she, and she's getting some encouragement from the chat, which is really cool.
Yes.
And it's Jude who actually commented before, who I didn't have her name. She said, Elaine said she had an interview this week. She's moved to the hiring manager next week. And that's great.
Yes.
Keep doing what you're doing. I have something brewing with a nonprofit waiting for them to get executive approval for a brand new position, a few things in the works. So this is where we talked about in our chat during the week is that, how can, don't wait for the one, go ahead and start to build and layer your opportunities so that you can have 3 or 4 opportunities out there. You have one that has moved on to some upper rounds. You got one that's beginning, one where you're almost quite there and you're talking and starting to schedule. And there's one where you're coming pretty close, maybe to a decision point or whatever that may be. You want to, the idea is to have several different opportunities available. Bob, do you want to say something about that?
Well, I just wanted to go back to when you were talking about being more proactive in your job search. I believe that's where you're leading to, the company list, the target company list.
Yeah.
So, I believe that too many people are more reactive. In other words, they're only applying online, using job boards. And this gets back to what Damian was saying is that, hey, if you're going to even get an interview, you're going to have to be able to write a resume that will pass the applicant tracking system. And there's been a lot of talk about the ATS on LinkedIn, and how complicated people are making it seem to be. But in any case, so try to be more proactive, develop that company list and still apply online. I'm not saying don't apply online, but after you apply online, your work's not done. In other words, you need to still network, you need to follow up, you need to, and somehow get your resume in the hands of the hiring manager if you can. In some cases, that's not possible, but the bottom line is people need to be more proactive than reactive. And as you were saying, Mark, you may have a really good opportunity with a company. I mean, really good. You think you got it, right? But you can't stop looking for other jobs. Not until your foot is in the door, not until your foot's in the door will you accept that. But just keep things going. Like you were saying, Mark, don't put your eggs in one basket, as a cliche goes.
Yes, Damian, I think that people also still, even when you've gotten companies, part of juggling 3 or 4 companies too, is that you got to start still continue to network within that framework and network within those companies so that you can get deeper in the search. Because the more the studies show, and we've talked about it on this show a couple of times, that the studies show the referral leads to a longer tenure with the job. It leads to more chances getting the interview, and it just leads to more opportunities. So the more you network deeply, the better your chances. We still riding with that, right, Damian?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, what I have noticed is it takes a while of doing all the right things, right cover
Mhm.
letter, right resume, right
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn profile,
Mm-hmm.
where you do build momentum. And once you've kind of hit that point of momentum, you've done the 20%, which is on the internet, and the 80%, which is networking. And as a result of that, you do get job offers. But like what Bob was saying is, don't stop. I mean, the best scenario is when you have two or three jobs that all pop up
Yeah.
at about the same time. And there is a protocol, I don't think we'll have time for it today, where you can actually go through and you can slow down one job scenario and speed up another so that they're almost dead even, so that you can make a decision and you're in control.
Yeah.
Another thing that people almost always tell me who've done it the right way is they will be back at work at the new company in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even 6 months. They will get invitations to interview because positions that they had applied for long ago that were just sitting out there in limbo, all of a sudden, they're in hiring mode and they want to interview that person. And that kind of puts them in a quandary because of everything they have gone through to get their current position. But in the end, it's all good news because they can feel good that they have done everything right. And then the challenge remains: keep networking, keep your resume up to date, and keep your LinkedIn profile robust and ready to go. Because frankly, there's no such thing as job security anymore.
Yeah, that's the
True.
truth. And one
True.
of the things that I want to point out is that one of Bob's, I think one of Bob's articles, if I'm not mistaken, no, this was a stat. I'm sorry, this was a stat I got from, I think it was CNBC, how the pandemic is fair for older workers and what they must do to convince interviewers their value. It says 19% of those in the lower earnings testile were no longer working 20% in 2020 compared with a year earlier. So
Right.
those who earned lower actually suffered more than those who are in that 80%. And we could almost assume that the 20% is hourly. So those wouldn't be you guys' clients per se, but I think some of the same messaging is still the same. Is that, and really, quite frankly, to make that jump, to make the jump that that hey, you should go ahead and start targeting more companies and start thinking more of the hierarchical funnel in the sense of going down. You cast a wide net and you start to lower it by the people that you reach out to. If that makes any sense. So the
Mhm.
lower end is that you have those 5, 6 people who've been able to help you get in, give you intel to introduce you to the right people,
Right.
and then the higher end are the people that you try to reach out on a wide scale. What are some other things that people can do to kind of, maybe if they haven't interviewed a lot or they're getting ones and twosies, maybe there's some ways that people can increase their chances of getting interviews? Bob, you have thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, other than being more proactive and while still applying online,
Hmm.
I think it's really, you know, Sarah Johnston. I was just thinking when you were talking about the target company list. She says maintain a list of 50 companies for which you'd like to work. I mean that's a little bit. That's a lot. but
That's high. I was
that's
I was a
high.
part of that. I was a part of that guide that was
Yeah.
put out. But having said that, there's a lot of ways to get traction in getting inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I advise my clients to have at least 20, where they're
Mhm.
researching the companies, and these aren't companies that have necessarily advertised positions. These are the companies that they really want to work for. And this is their way of, sort of getting introduced to these companies so that when a job is advertised, or if they want to fill a position, without advertising, they maybe want to, fill it secretly, then you might be the person. You might be the person that they remember through your informational interview, and where you've really impressed them, so they remember you, and they say, hey, okay, remember Elaine? Okay, we really liked it. We talked to her, so we're going to have her come in. We'll have more conversations, and then, maybe we'll advertise a position, or because we have to advertise a position, it's already a done deal. And, I always say, look, I don't care if you get a job by writing your resume on a napkin, but just do your due diligence, conduct the
Mhm.
job search the right way. So, it doesn't matter, just as long as you get the job that you want. And, and I really believe that it comes down to networking, not only in person or via Zoom, but on LinkedIn. You know,
Mhm.
when I ask people, so have you been networking? And they say, yes, I've been using LinkedIn. And I'm like, and, oh no, I've just been using LinkedIn. Well, no, LinkedIn is a great supplement to your in-person networking. What it really comes down to is networking. And it may be after the fact, it may be after you've gotten your interview, but you want to develop those relationships. And you know, as we were saying, as Damian said, after you've landed your job, don't stop. Don't stop networking. Don't stop building on your resume, because, you never know. You may want to move on, or you may have to move on. Um, and in terms of networking, I know I'm going on and on about this.
No,
Network
go
with
ahead. Go
everyone.
ahead. You're good.
Network with everyone. Your neighbor, your relative, your convenience store owner, your hairstylist, your dentist, your barber, whomever. Just get the word out there. Tell people that you're looking for work, because if you don't, then no one's going to be able to help you. And I find that a lot of people haven't even let people know they're out of work.
Yep.
I ask why. They say, well, I'm a little embarrassed, or I'm ashamed, or I don't deserve the help. Yes, you do.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You deserve the help. People want to help you. You just have to ask for it. And that's another thing. How do you get to the interviews? You got to ask. You got to ask for favors. You got to ask for help. And you need to reciprocate as well. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
networking,
Damien, I
man.
think you want to add something to that.
I do. Just a quick story. There was a pit member that had relocated to our area and had targeted a major bank here and couldn't figure out how to get in. Another pit member said, well, you need to go and see this particular barber. And it took 2 weeks. He went in. It happened, oh, by the way, to be in the bank building, and he got
Mhm.
to know the barber, and the barber said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm unemployed at the moment because I'm new to the area, but I did banking. And he said, well, you need to talk to Joe, Larry, and Mary,
Yeah.
and here are their direct down numbers. Now I don't know quite where they are within the organization, but I've been cutting their hair for years. It turned out it was the VP of Finance, the VP of Human Resources, and a director.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the punch was when he called and he said, Joe Blow, your barber, suggested that we get together so I can learn a little bit more about the XYZ bank. Barbers and beauticians, in my experience, are some of the greatest connectors around, because they don't care what you do for a living. They care for you as a person, and opportunity in many cases is flying around everywhere. You just have to figure out ways where you can kind of reach out and hook on. And if I could, I'd like to go back to the, job interview here, job interview there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that that I developed because of the fact that I had a kind of onesie twosie person was a thank you letter that reminded the person of the requirements of the position. So one column said your requirements, and the other column said my abilities. And the introductory paragraph said, dear Mary Jane, I really enjoyed our interview today. I know we talked about a lot of things, but I wanted to take an opportunity to summarize how my abilities meet your needs. And then the two columns, and then closing paragraph. Again, thank you for your time. I look forward to next appropriate steps. And here's your key sentence. And you will hear from me shortly. And that gives you permission to take the next step. And I guarantee that there's nobody out there doing that. And what you have done after that first interview is reminded them how you are the answer to the employer's needs. And what happened as a result is the number of interviews that this person was having went up, meaning, yes, they may have had a first interview and then nothing, but after the first interview, the number of second interviews that this person had went through the roof because he took the time to remind the person, why he was qualified. And as they went through the interviewing cycle, when it came to trying to remember, who did what, there it was, the thank you note. And it just reinforced that the person had done their research, was ready for the position, interviewed for the position, took the time to thank them, and reminded them why they were qualified for the position. So, that's something I just wanted to put out there for our audience because it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think we've talked about that story once before. I don't remember if it was online or offline, but I love hearing that story about how people are incidental and accidental in their meeting
Superficial
people that leads
networkers.
absolutely, right. So Elaine continues. She asks his questions, and this is a great question. I want to talk about this. This was almost as good as the one that I had laid up here. Says, do you think it is a major disadvantage having interviews online, Zoom, etc., rather than in person, where you can make a much better connection face to face? I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore. I struggle with that. As an introvert naturally, I've learned to acclimate to both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really as many Zoom and videos I've done now over the past year, I find it second nature. And sometimes you have to do more to get more out of it. So I think in your preparation, it's kind of tough because you could prepare for the Zoom meetings. Now I have people who prepared for Zoom meetings, but still didn't get past the first round because, when you're talking to a machine or avatar or artificial intelligence, they don't have warmth or any human gestures that enable you to endear yourself to. So I understand that. At the same time, you have to kind of, acclimate your approach in order for you to get to where the camera is, but nobody knows where that line is because some people are able to do it better than others. But I think sometimes you take a little bit more practice on that. Bob, your thoughts on that particular
Wow. I
question?
have a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, I'm looking at myself, and I'm wearing a maroon shirt and I have a maroon, blanket behind me. So
right.
I definitely am not making a great first impression. it is about your presentation. Okay.
Mhm.
If you can get that straight, like Mark, you have a great background, great lighting, all that stuff. Then it's just a matter of getting used to talking to that machine. It's getting used to talking to the computer. Hopefully there's someone on the other end and you're
Mhm.
making eye contact with the camera. Okay. You're not looking down thinking that you're making eye contact that way. I mean,
Unless you're running a
all of
production
this
like me.
mechanical stuff. What's that?
So unless you're running production like me, then I'm looking everywhere.
I know. It's all the mechanical stuff. If you can get past that, then you have to realize, hey, they're feeling the same way. Elaine, I'm looking at her photo. I'm looking at her LinkedIn photo, and she comes across as very vibrant in the photo. And I'm sure she's that way. I'm sure
Mhm.
she is an extrovert, unlike me, who's an
Mhm.
introvert. And I'm cool. I'm cool talking to the camera.
Mhm.
um, so it just may be a matter of your personality type. Maybe introverts have an easier time with Zoom, and extroverts, they got to be with people. They got to press some flesh and be in presence of people. Well, also, and I'm not saying that introverts don't like that as well, but extroverts, they tend to be a little more energetic in that way. They feel more comfortable with people and they have more energy with people. But I you didn't introduce me entirely in terms of what I do at the Career Center. Is one of my major responsibilities is leading webinars. And
Mhm.
so I'm looking into a camera and I'm not seeing anyone on the other end because we use GoToWebinar. So I'm totally used to it. Some people, they're just wigged out by it. They can't deal with it. So
Right.
um, yeah, so there's just so much packed into that question, Elaine, that I sort of am discombobulated here.
That's all right, Bob.
Have I missed
We'll
anything?
come. We'll come back to you because I'm sure you'll have more.
Oh, I got, yeah.
Damian, your thoughts on Elaine's question?
I agree with Elaine from the standpoint that you do lose a lot when you do Zoom. And what I've learned over the past year, now imagine our deliverable at Professionals in Transition more than anything is emotional support, job search support, networking support. Now, the first thing that I noticed is that doesn't translate over Zoom. And so the way that I reconciled myself is realizing that Zoom is a great way to share information, but it is not a effective way to really build the rapport that you would have in an in-person meeting. However, given everything, um, in many cases, for the person who's interviewing you, Zoom is much more efficient. Many times they're running, depending on what their applicant tracking system is. They can be running psychographics on you, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Uh, and the more you practice, the better you are. I did a television segment for our local NBC station for about 3 years. And I asked the anchor, what's the secret? And she said that when you're doing work over a camera, you have to take yourself up by about 150%, because if you just act like the normal you're going to come across as very flat. So I guess the moral to the story is, when you're using Zoom, you can try to establish limited rapport, but understand that it's a great way to translate information. But an in-person interview, and hopefully in-person support groups again, you do get that warm and fuzzy. You do get a chance to walk through the office and look around and see how people are working, and really use your intuition as you go through it, and make that kind of sticky in-person connection that you just can't make with a click. However, I don't think that Zoom interviews are going to go away after the pandemic is done. And I think it's just something that folks are going to have to get more comfortable with and used to, because unfortunately, Zoom and some of the others, it's a great way to weed people out without ever talking to a human being. So, that's kind of the way that of the future. And I just think it's something that we all have to get more comfortable with and used to.
I
So
think
I
that
mean, I
that's
agree. I agree with you
go
entirely,
ahead, Bob.
Damien. I think that you cannot have that human touch if you're not in the presence of people. However, in defense of Zoom, there is some human touch there as well. You can be human in the way that maybe you have kids running in the background, you have your dog barking, there's construction going on outside. I mean, as long as you let the interviewers know beforehand that there will be some background noise, that's fine. But I would think as an interviewer that if I were to see or hear all that, I'd be like, okay, so I'm getting to know a little bit more about Bob. Okay, Bob's got a dog, a really cute dog, who, by the way, is sitting beside me, Charlie. Um, he's got kids. Okay, I'm good with kids. So yeah, I mean, it's not totally non-human Zoom. That's what I'm
Mhm.
saying, that you can get some kind of feel for the person on the other end. But you're right.
Yeah,
You have to bring it up a notch. You really have to be more animated. I mean, I'm not this animated when I'm in public with people, but you have to be, because otherwise they're not going to get a connection with you.
I think as we have as we have artificial intelligence that's providing data,
Mm,
whatever that data says via a video interview. Because keep in mind, when people are going for the first one or two interviews, they're not talking to a person per se. They might be, but they may not be.
mm,
The question is it directly or indirectly at first? So when you
Mhm.
have that first interview, you really having a dialogue with the avatar. They may give you, and we talked about this on the show, they've given you a few practice sessions to get
right,
comfortable.
right.
But really, what Damien said is pretty key. And I think that goes overall. Presentation matters, and it probably matters more to ramp it up in that when you're talking to an avatar than
Mm,
you are to a human, because I wouldn't want somebody to go all the way to 150% when I'm in person, right? Because that's overwhelming. That's over the top, and people might feel a little violated. I don't know, but I think ultimately, yeah, you cross some space here. But at the same time, uh, to have those conversations, you got your volume needs to be up, your energy level, I think, is where you
it
start to
does.
connect. And
Yeah.
whether you look directly at the camera or not, if you're engaging, you're engaging. And people are going to look away at different spots in the camera. Like I said, I'm doing the tech control as well as trying to talk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm
my
looking at
eyes are
all
to
the
look
chats.
everywhere, but
Yeah.
I definitely want to give the energy whenever I come forth and begin to bring forward pouring, because I want people to remember it. But I think it is a strategy. As we began to talk about older workers and kind of migrated our way through it, it is sort of, the older you get, the more comfortable you've become with your delivery and the way that you speak, unless of
Mm,
course you're in constant practice all the time, which Toastmasters, there's other tools online you can use to get better at that. But I think all things considered, sometimes it does help as a second another person to come along and help you get that part right. One of the things I think I saw, um, yes, it was Prasanti. Hi, Prasanti. How are you? And she's been visiting all the live shows. I saw you earlier at another show. I saw you, but it says the person on the other side cannot see you personally and feel your warmth personality online. And this has been a challenge to
that's
me
true.
during the pandemic. And I think that confidence also has a has something to do with it. Prasanti, I don't think confidence is your issue. We talked about that before. But I think for those who do lack confidence, you've got to start to be before that camera starts to roll and start to count things. And maybe if you guys, if you want to take a shot at just commenting a little bit more about presentation, Bob. I'm sure there's more that has come across your desk as how people shouldn't come across, um, in relaying and presenting themselves via video.
Yeah. So just fairly recently, I've been interviewing people for unemployment insurance rep positions,
Mm-hmm.
and what you become aware of is how poorly they present themselves and their background is. And it is a bit of a distraction. And you like to think, okay, so this person's internet is going in and out. We'll be able to fix that because our company will
Mm-hmm.
give them the tools they need.
Right.
But it's still this distraction, and you need
Mm-hmm.
to, as best you can, get rid of those. Uh, I'm, believe it or not, I'm in the best place in the house for both internet connection and background, and still my background sucks. It's just
Mm-hmm.
um, so how you present yourself online is important, but not as important as the content. In other words, if you're saying great things, if you're saying, if you're able to really, illustrate or demonstrate your greatness, then that's more important than how you present yourself, on camera. Um, but nonetheless, I mean, as I was saying, when I do webinars, I don't see how people are reacting on the other end. It's similar to those pre-recorded video interviews where you're just given those questions and you need to answer those questions. You're being timed and then they're submitted to the company. So you're not seeing anyone on the other end. And that's a little unnerving. But also, it's unnerving when you are looking at people, say a panel of interviewers on Zoom, and you don't know how they're feeling. You don't know
Right.
how they're really reacting. You see their faces. Maybe some of them are more animated than others, but like
Mm-hmm.
Prasanti said, you're not able to really express your human warmth. Um, so I think that I think that interviewers understand this, and I think they're going to give you a break here. But getting back to what I said earlier, you have to get rid of the distractions. You really have to get rid of anything that comes across as a poor first impression.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think there's something Prasanti says. I want to kind of delve off into this. A couple of things. One is that I remember in
I saw that.
hiring myself was how nonverbal cues are everything when you're in person. And as
Mm,
an interviewer, you're looking not just at what people say, but you're looking at what they do, their habits, their nervousness, and whether and that has an impression on you.
mhm.
I think in video, you are taking away part of that because you don't have impressions. Like me, I use my hands a lot. That comes from a theater background from high school and college.
Right.
But I think ultimately, for a lot of people, there's other nonverbal things that people do. And that also has an impression on you. Damien, do you feel like some of that, what people have leveraged in person, is taken away from Zoom, becomes a disadvantage to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that Zoom flattens you when it comes to interviewing. The only thing that
Mhm.
you really have to go on is the way that you interact with the person, the background that they have. And I mean, you can see that mine's plain, and I'm not happy with it either.
Hmm.
And your internet connection. And one
Mhm.
of the things that I do is I cable from my computer directly into the router to
Mhm.
avoid any blips if at all possible. And you get your strongest signal closest to the router, which is why I'm downstairs, as opposed to when
Mhm.
you are in person, you're 3D, you're animated, and there's a a feeling that you create that kind of crosses the border, if you will. And hiring is still a very emotional experience. And it still
Great.
comes down to, if I like you, I may hire you, but if I don't, I won't. And that's almost twice removed when you're doing Zoom, because again, you don't get the chance to press the flesh. You don't get a chance to see what the office looks like. You don't get a chance to be in the room with the same person. And you have to find ways to compensate as best you can uh, using Zoom and interview differently, because they're two completely different mediums.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that people have to learn to, I think, in the future is that they're going to have to customize their delivery, no matter what it is, because there's also going to be the panel interviews. And there could be 6 people on screen, which I'm sure has happened. You can't do some of the things you do with one-on-one Zoom
No.
or in person than you do with panel. Panel requires some agility and being able to make sure that your point comes across to not just one person, but 6 people, whatever that is. So, or it could be that you may need to do a presentation and nobody won't say anything. That could be kind of tough to bring across. So I think job seekers and all of us are going to have to learn to adjust how to deliver what we need to deliver in order to get across our message to make the best impression and to impress employers.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we only got through. I think Prasanti says prior to the pandemic, I'd been 90% successful in one-person interviews. I believe that. But I think what it comes down to, again, your ability to be agile through all different platforms, whether it's Zoom, is Google Meets, or whatever it may be, that if you're able to adjust, that's what you're going to need to do in the workplace anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So as an employer may be thinking, say, well, we have all these different speeds and all these different cultures and climates in my company, and that person has to be able to adjust to all of those as they begin to present themselves. And if you get that one shot, you only get one shot. Nobody's not going to say you get to go on to the next round. Let's see what you do. That would be nice in an ideal world, but I'm afraid that it could be one and done with that person as far as that person concerned and what they're deciding to do with you. So we're 2 minutes before the top of the hour, believe it or not. I think we only got through 10% of our actual outline because we got a lot of interaction, which is perfect for me. I don't mind that at all. That's what we want. We want to help real people with real problems and all that. So somehow Bob has disappeared. There he is. You disappeared
Oh,
on
was it
us for
me?
odds together.
See, bad
Yeah,
internet.
and
That could be a
happens.
killer. That could be a killer.
That could be a killer.
Right.
But you know what? Like, people are more forgiving now.
I
I
think
don't know
so.
if
I really do.
I,
Yeah.
I think employers have more patience, but somebody that's able to hit it from front to end, unfortunately, sometimes wins.
Yeah, and I'm
That's the
glad that
way
you
it
said
goes.
unfortunately, because that may not be the most qualified, person for the job.
But that
You
is
know
the
what I
person
mean?
that performed at that time,
Exactly.
which is
Exactly.
which is a lot of interviews. I mean, if you're a savvy interviewer, if you've done a lot of hiring, people can put on a show for 20 minutes to an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah.
That's not really a big deal. But
No.
if people can't adjust to it and they got that one shot, there's no way to give them the benefit of the doubt
I
over
know.
somebody
I
that
know.
did perform. And that's the bad part about it, is that we rely so much on that person to person conversation. So we've come to the top of the hour. Bob McIntosh, thank you very much. Anything that we should be looking forward to coming from you on LinkedIn or any other platform? Any podcasts that you got coming up?
Oh, I still have to apologize to you for not recording our great discussion, and I loved your
We did. We
response.
just
The
did. We
people
just
were
did.
served, right? The people were
Right.
served. So I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that. So I'm going to have more guest speakers. I have Susan
Okay.
Joyce lined up. I
Oh,
have
good.
Awesome.
yes, and I can't wait for that. and
That's going to be
and a
great.
bunch of others. But you know, and I hope people will look out for this on LinkedIn because I will announce them. I'm just going to keep writing.
Mhm.
You know, I
Yeah,
just keep doing what
I
I
hear you.
do, and
Yeah, yeah.
um,
So will I.
you know,
So will I.
I haven't gotten into the video thing yet. I tried it, but I just didn't like it
You're
too much.
still, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I prefer writing too. That's where I'm most
yeah.
comfortable. But Damien and Jack have got me by the thumbs and doing these
Hmm.
live stream things. You so what can
It
I
was great
do?
meeting you, Damien. It was great.
It was great.
Yes.
And if I could say one thing, I would encourage our viewers to go to thingscareerrelated.com. That's Bob's
Oh, thanks.
website.
Yeah.
And there is a great article that's called 3 Tips for Using LinkedIn's Companies feature to find a job. It is an excellent article, and it'll give you some insight into some of the things that you can do with LinkedIn that
Hmm.
you can't do that isn't apparent to the eye, and articles on interviewing and soup to nuts. So it's great stuff, and
Thank you.
I would encourage you to go there and also to follow him. And thank
Yeah.
you for being here today, Bob.
Oh, my pleasure. This is awesome.
Yep. And Damien, where are you going to be in the media here in the next week or two? You always got something coming up.
Yeah, there's a Tribune Media article, career article that is either out or is coming out. And I have made a commitment to be more like you guys and start getting stuff out in the form of articles
Mm.
because the way that you guys write, I mean, it's terrific. And as Mark and I have said many times, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So that's what's on my platter.
It is. And as I was on with Don Graham last week, she brought up an article that I wrote 10 years ago. And I was completely floored that she found it. I made mention of it in my post this morning on LinkedIn, but I'm not going to make a big deal of it. Go check out the post instead, and
Is
and
it
and
still
where that
relevant?
she felt it was.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
so if she brought it up on her Sirius XM show, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it
Okay.
is pretty relevant.
Let's
So
face it. Some
it,
things haven't changed in the job search.
Mhm.
especially when it comes to human nature
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the way that we need to be resilient, we need to be able to persevere, the way we need to be patient, all
Hmm.
those things have not changed at all since we had the job search that we have now. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us here on the Modern Job Search Checklist. We'll be back next Friday. We have another guest, but I forgot that guest's name. So that's a shame. I was here trying to make a point, but we are streaming on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. You can go to my Facebook page to catch it. I think Damien might have shared it to his. I don't know, but I'm sure he will. And
Hmm.
Bob, we're all intertwined on Facebook, YouTube channel. Check out the Modern Job Search Checklist channel on YouTube, and of course LinkedIn. We are always around here. Thank you very much for joining us. For the rest of you watching us, viewing, thank you so much for joining us and
Yeah. Thanks for
providing a
the
lively
audience.
chat.
Yeah.
Yep. So we end it here. Have a great week. We'll see you next Friday.
All right.